Let's talk issues. King
Sure.
County Councilman Bob Ferguson.
Sure.
Transportation is always a Gordian knot that policymakers have a tough time cutting. It continues to be a problem at the state legislative level, and the governor is having a hard time trying to figure things out there. But insofar as King County is one of the largest transportation or transit providers in the state, maybe actually the largest transit provider with metro buses, how does transportation, how do you move forward on regional transportation planning, whether it's bus service with Metro, Sound Transit, in our case Community Transit and Everett Transit, or how do you have a regional conversation about transit versus roads? You know, we keep going back to the polls for more taxes, and we keep getting delays of projects. It seems to be that's the case, even though Sound Transit is going to have light rail come online, I believe, this year.
That's right.
Tell me, sort of, we'll start with just some general thoughts on regional transportation and the problems that it creates.
Sure. So, important issue. I take the bus to work every day. I take the 41 from Northgate to downtown Seattle. So I'm there on the bus standing more often than not. Jam-packed buses. People often left at the curb because the bus is so full. The driver says, wait for the next bus. So from a transit standpoint, I'm talking to folks every day who are riding the bus and experience frustration of wanting more transit to get them where they want to go. And that's not just bus, but rail and other options as well. So to your question, how do we move forward? It's been, you're right, we've had decades, frankly, of essentially gridlock and moving forward in transportation. I do think there's reason for optimism, and that is, as you know, the voters approved last year a major proposal, came out of Sound Transit, for largely putting together light rail that will reach Northgate, I believe, by like 2020, and Linwood by 2023, if I've got my years right. So really we'll get you from the airport up to Linwood. The funding is there to really move people on the light rail line. I think it's actually a sign of great progress that the three counties, Pierce, Snohomish, King, the representatives there on the Sound Transit Board got together, created a proposal. As you recall, 2 years ago, it was rejected by the voters. I think they learned their lesson. It was too big, too expensive. They scaled it back, came back to the voters, and it went forward. And so I think there's reason for optimism there that we did get a package to the voters, and the voters responded to it. But to be successful, it's like anything else, right? It's getting folks in a room who can set aside the geographical borders, which are often quite arbitrary. Division between Snohomish and King. Well, really, is there, you know, it's really somewhat arbitrary that people still want to be able to move. They've got to move their buses on community transit down to King County to get them to downtown Seattle if that's where they're going, and vice versa. So I do believe there's a reason for optimism in giving the voters, who I think if you give them a good package, a thoughtful package, and make the case to them, they're willing to raise their taxes to improve their transportation options. And I grew up in Seattle. I'm a native of Seattle, and I can remember a time when traffic wasn't part of life. You just got around whenever you wanted to. Those days are long gone. So I think folks have reached a frustration level, but are now willing to make the investment necessary to improve transportation.
You mentioned that the prior package 2 years ago failed. It had a significant investment in roads.
Yes.
Do you think that we've moved beyond roads and transit to where we just are supporting transit, not even interested in building roads?
I don't think that's where we're at. I mean, I think the two do have to go together on some level. However, I think there was a clear lesson learned on the first one that folks thought, hey, it was more on the roads than they want to see, and they want to see more of a transit-focused package. That was right for last year. But I don't think that precludes us in the future saying, hey, we need to do something with our roads. That is the infrastructure of our community. You have to make investments there to maintain the roads, the bridges, et cetera. There's lots going on with 520 now. The viaduct, huge infrastructure needs that exist right now, and big challenges there. So no, I think the two have to go hand in hand. But I think to get things moving with transit, with light rail, the voters did want to see a transit-oriented package. And I think Sound Transit did the right thing by focusing on that last year.
I hesitate to ask this question because it's not related probably to most of what you do, but it's a hot button issue in Snohomish County in terms of transportation, which is aviation transportation. And we finally have the third runway at SeaTac moving forward. And one of the questions in regional planning is, where do you put additional airports for commercial traffic? And at Painfield, it's an issue I don't expect that you're fully informed on, but in Painfield, the Snohomish County Council has to deal with expanding that facility for commercial flights. Do you think that we need additional air service in in the Seattle area. I mean, with a third runway at SeaTac, does that meet our economic development needs as a region? Or is that even constrictive? I mean, and so I'm asking sort of from a regional economic development perspective, do we need more flights in and out of the Seattle area?
It's a great question, and one actually the county grappled with just, I think it was about 2 years ago or so, when County Executive Ron Sims, when he was county executive, proposed turning Boeing Field, otherwise known as, less commonly known as King County International Airport, but more commonly known as Boeing Field, which is of course quite close to downtown Seattle, to actually bring in, I think it was Southwest Airlines, he proposed bring in to start running some additional flights into Boeing Field. Now, when that proposal came out, I heard about it, frankly, when it hit the newspapers. I didn't know about it in advance. But it was not a very popular proposal, particularly for the folks who live near Boeing Field. So, of course, they have an existing airport, but relatively speaking, it's a relatively quiet airport in terms of the amount of traffic moving in and out. This proposal would have substantially increased the amount of traffic. I think there are pros and cons to the proposal, and I think Executive Sims is trying to get at essentially the issue you're raising is perhaps we can do more. We have this airport close to downtown Seattle. Perhaps it can be an economic engine for King County as well. But the surrounding neighborhoods, not surprisingly, really opposed it. Many elected officials who represent those areas opposed it right away, and frankly, it went nowhere in a hurry, and eventually the executive simply dropped the proposal. So these issues are difficult where anytime you're talking about an airport, even an already existing airport, but you're going to increase the traffic, and Payne Field's a good example, similar to Boeing Field in that respect, it's a challenge. The third runway down SeaTac, Councilmember Julie Patterson from the King County Council represents that area. Adam Smith in Congress represents that area. I know those folks well. They worked on those issues, and it's a challenge. But I think for right now, to answer your broader question of do we need additional space, I think we have to see how this third runway works out. Give it some time. Does it meet our needs? And let's face it, the economy is changing all the time. And I think time will tell whether we need additional room later on. But what I can say from King County's experience, the attempt by Executive Sims, to put additional routes into Boeing Field went nowhere fast. That politically, there's the question of, hey, do we need it? And then there's the political question of how would we do it? And as you know, those two can collide in ways that often aren't pleasant. And I think that was certainly the case for that proposal for Boeing Field.